Okay, so with the interest rate swaps, it's really very easy. Just you need to master some of a few things. Interest rate swaps is a contractual agreement. A contractual agreement between the two parties. Between the two parties to exchange interest payments. Exchange interest payments. One will be paying a fixed rate, and the other will be paying a floating rate. The other will pay a floating. The other will pay a floating rate, or what we call a variable rate. That is based on a notional principal amount. So remember here your aim, you as two parties, your aim is to minimize on the exposure. These interest rates keep on increasing, or maybe it may decrease depending. So for you enter into an arrangement saying that, okay, I am my loan, I am paying interest at a fixed rate. Then for you may be paying interest at a variable rate. So we can, depending on what we want to mitigate, the other party may say that, okay, let's enter into an arrangement. Then we exchange the interest you're paying. I be the one to pay it. Then the one I'm paying, you pay it. Okay, just that is. But here, what you need to know is that you are basically exchanging interest payments. The principal amount will not be hedged. Here you're just hedging. The principal amount will remain the same. Will remain the same. Now, when you're handling this part, there are some steps that you must know, especially when it comes to computations. Steps you will need it always identify. Always identify the two parties. As you handle your calculations. These are some of the steps that you need. Identify the two parties involved. That is the company hedging. Then also the counterparty. Because you need if you want hedge, you need the other party. But of course, there will always be as well. The. Sorry guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so you will always need to identify. The parties, the two parties involved. That is the company hedging and the counterparty. But at the same time, you need to observe who is an intermediator there. Okay. Then number two, you always need to identify. identify the two rates, identify the two interest rates involved. You need to identify that and determine the difference. Determine the difference between the two rates. Of course, here what we are trying to mean, here is that you need to know the fixed rate for the company hedging. You need also to know the fixed rate for the other counterparty. Then look for the difference between the fixed rates. At the same time, you need to look at the other rate of floating rate for the counterparty and the company hedging. Then you also look for the difference. At the end, the difference between those two, the fixed rates and the floating rates, you will find that we go ahead and eventually determine as well the difference. You determine the difference. You eventually determine. You will need to go ahead and determine the difference. On interest rate difference. Okay, this one I'm going to explain it as we do the working. But basically what we are saying, you have the counterpart, you have the company hedging, let's say X, you have the counterpart Y. So you will need another column for interest rate. You will have a column of interest rate difference. You have the column of interest rate difference. So what we are trying to mean here is that what I'm trying to mean here is that if it's company X, of course you need to identify, let's say, fixed rate. What is fixed rate for company X? That is the company hedging. If the fixed rate is 10, then what is the fixed rate of the other counterparty? It could be, let's say 15. Then here look for the difference. The difference will be 5. Don't mind about saying that I have to put a negative, a positive. No. Here we'll always just capture the difference in absolute form. So you don't need to put this money, this is higher, this is less, so I have to put negative. No. Here you will not always put negatives. Just look for the difference. So also identify the other rate of the floating rate. That's what we are trying to mean. Identify two rates. That is the fixed rate and the floating rate. So what in the question you will be given the floating rate. Now the floating rate will always be the CBR, the central bank rate, or the LIBOR, or the prime lending rate, then plus let's say 1%, depending on how it is quoted. Depending on how it is quoted. Then the counterparty may be CBR plus let's say 2%. Okay, plus 2%. All these ones you'll be picking them from the question. Examiner must give you these rates. So also go ahead and look for the difference. You will also go ahead and look for the difference. Identify. We are saying identify the two rates involved, that is fixed rate and floating rate. Go ahead and determine the difference between the rates. We have determined the difference between the rates. After determining the interest between the rates, go ahead and determine go ahead and determine the difference on interest rate differences. On interest rate difference. So what does that one mean exactly? That eventually go ahead and determine the difference on the interest rate difference. It basically means that once you have these differences, go ahead and determine the difference. Like what is the difference between this and this? Of course, here you need to do a subtraction. 5 minus 1, what do you get? That's what we mean. Okay, so you'll find that here you have a difference of 4. So that difference will give you the gain. Will give you the gain. To get the gain, you get the net, the gain on swap, the gain or loss. Yeah, it will always be the gain on. It will always be a gain on swap, because here we don't want negatives, guys. There is no way you will get negatives. The difference you get will always be the gain. So here, this difference is a gain on what? A gain on the swap. Okay. Let me hope I have explained the step number 2. You identify the two rates involved, then determine the difference between the rates. After determining the differences between the rates, you go ahead and determine the difference on the interest rate. On the interest rate difference to get a gain on the swap. Okay, so once you have this gain, you look at step number 3. You look at step number 3. So take note that on step number 2, each party, the party I'm talking about, the company hedging and the counterparty, each party will always be having the fixed rate and the floating rate as a must. Okay, so step number 3, you will need to determine. You will need to just simply get the net. You need to determine each party. You need to determine the net gain of each party. You determine the net gain of each party. Out of this gain, what will each party take? Now, as you determine the net gain of each party will be the sharing ratio, which will always be given in the question. How is the gain made on swap shared? So it will always be given in the question, the sharing ratio times, you get the sharing ratio times this gain on swap, then the answer you get, subtract the total fees charged. The total fees are charged by the bank. Because as you enter into this transaction, of course, you need the intermediator, the bank. The banker will charge you some money. The banker will charge you some money. This is what we are saying, that after knowing your gain, you less the costs that you incurred. This is the cost of each party. If you're looking at party A, you look at its costs. Don't add, don't aggregate. Here it's the total fees of the party. The party. Okay, that's how you will be determining the net gain of each party. Now, after that, you have to look at another step. You know that these steps don't change, guys. So the moment you understand the flow, all things will be very easy. So step number 4 will be to determine the net results. Determine the net results without swap. That is step number 4. Determine the net results without the swap. So as you determine net result without swap, of course here you will look at I am going to explain this in details. Let me not waste time here, but I am going to show you how we determine the net results without swap practically. Okay, as we do that in number. How do we determine the net results without swap? After determining the net results without swap, the last step is to determine the net results. To determine the net results with swap. That will be your last step. So how do we determine the net results without swap? How do we determine the net results with swap? We are going to see this practically. We are going to see this practically. But these are the steps you will always need to handle a question about interest rate swaps. Okay, so without wasting time, let's look at that computation number. Let's look at that number. We understand how to apply this practically. So we are told that you use interest rate swap to comment on the results. Show relevant workings. That is part A. So what are we given? We are told that KK Limited, this is limited, KK Limited has recently appointed a manager, that is Mr. Joseph, who has a number of plans to expand the company. He also plans to look carefully at the costs of all departments in KK Limited's head office, including the centralized treasury departments. Okay, the first major investment which Mr. Joseph will oversee is an investment in facilities to produce application-specific components. To finance the planned investment, it is likely that KK Limited will have to borrow money. Are you seeing that? You have to borrow money. Whenever you borrow money, there is always that risk, the interest. It is now 1st May 2024, and it seems that KK Limited will have to borrow $90 million on 1st September for a period of 6 months. Though both the amount and the period of borrowing are subject to some uncertainty. Very, very key, because whenever you find that there is uncertainty, always know that there is also the exposure, especially when things doesn't move in your favor. So the treasury plans to borrow the funds at a flotation rate of CBR plus 30 basis points. The CBR, this is the flotation rate. This is the flotation rate. That is of CBR plus 30 basis points. Remember what I said, if it's 30 basis points, what is the percentage? If it's 30 basis points, what is the percentage?
0.3%.
0.3%.
Yeah, 0.3%. You simply get 30 divided by 100. Okay, so it means that here the flotation rate is CBR plus 0.3%. That is the flotation rate. They are telling us that CBR is currently, the central bank rate is currently 4.8%, but is expected to rise up by 0.6% between now and 1st September. Okay. Relevant information about swaps is as follows. Now, sorry. KK Limited is treasurer. KK Limited is treasurer wants to consider using options on futures to hedge loans. That is the option on futures to hedge loans. Although KK Limited has not previously used the swaps for hedging purposes, the treasurer has asked XY Bank to find a counterparty for a potential swap arrangement. So you see here they are introducing the swaps. Okay. And here they are telling XY Bank to find the counterparty for a potential swap arrangement. Now you have relevant information about swaps. You have relevant information about swaps. You see, not all information, like this information given, this one can be applied when you are using, let's say, interest rate futures, interest rate, maybe interest rate or options. Okay, but you'll find that you're not going to use some of the information. For you, if you're using swap, just look for information related to what? Swaps. Okay, so we are told that XY Bank has found, this is now our intermediator. Our intermediator has found a possible counterparty to enter into a swap with the KK Limited. We have now the counterparty. The counterparty can borrow at an annual floating rate. So here you have the counterparty flotation rate, which is this one. And at the same time, you have the fixed rate of the counterparty. The fixed rate of 6.2%. Okay. XY Bank has quoted KK Limited a notional fixed rate. So here you have as well. You guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
we can hear.
So here we are told that XY Bank has quoted KK Limited a notional fixed rate. So you have a fixed rate of the company hedging, that is KK, which is 5.6 for it to borrow. Remember, we had seen the flotation rate for this KK. This was a flotation rate. If they, as they plan to borrow, the funds will be at a flotation rate of CBR plus as 0.3%. All right. So next, they are telling us that XY Bank, this is our intermediator, XY Bank would charge a fee of 15 basis points to each party individually. So each party will be charged the 15 basis points to act as the intermediary of the swap. 15 basis points in terms of percentage, that's what? That's 0.15. You just divide by 100. Okay. Both parties would share. This statement is very, very key. If both parties would share equally. So the percent, if they say equally, the percentage is what? Both parties would share equally the potential gains from the swap contract. So it means that the percentage or the sharing ratio is 50-50, 50%, 50%. And that's all. That's all. That's all about the question. So what can you do? What can you do? Of course, here, what you can do as you follow your steps, what I said, just follow these steps. Identify the two parties, the two parties involved. Here, what are those two parties involved? What are those two parties involved? What is the company hedging? The company hedging is KK Limited, isn't it? We are identifying the two parties involved. So we have KK Limited. Then what is the counterparty name? We don't have the counterparty name, so you can call it the counterparty. The counterparty. Sometimes they can give you the name. Then you have the intermediator, which is the bank, XY Bank. XY Bank, your intermediary. This one is acting as intermediator. So you have two parties. Now, after knowing the two parties, the step number 2, we are told, to identify the interest rates involved. So here you have our KK Limited, we have the counterparty, then we are going to get the interest rate difference. So here you start with what? You can start with any. The order does not matter. You can start with the flotation, the floating rate, or you can start with fixed. Order does not matter. Then you have the fixed rate. What is the floating rate when it comes to the counterparty? Are we given that? What is the flotation rate when it comes to the company hedging? The company hedging, the flotation rate is CBR plus what? 30 basis points. So here, our floating rate will be CBR plus 30 basis points, which is 0.3%. Then what is the floating rate when it comes to the counterparty? Are we given that?
It's CBR plus 1.6%.
CBR plus 1.6%. We are given this CBR plus 1.6%. So what is the difference now? You go ahead and look for the difference between the rates. So of course the difference, you will be just focusing on the percentages. 0.3 minus 1.6, what do you get? In absolute terms, you don't put negatives. Just look for the difference. What is the difference?
1.3.
1.3%. Okay. Then next you look at fixed rate. What is the fixed rate when it comes to the company hedging? Are we given that? The fixed rate, they told us somewhere here that XY Bank has quoted KK Limited a notional fixed rate of 5.6% for it to borrow. So here you have a fixed rate, which is 5.6. Here it's 5.6%. Then what is the fixed rate for the counterparty? We are given the fixed rate, which is what? 6.2. 6.2%. So what is the difference?
Is 0.6.
0.6. Once you get the difference, go ahead and get the difference, the difference between interest rate differences, so that you can get a gain on swap. Gain on swap. You get these are differences, but go ahead and get the difference. That's what we stated. Go ahead and get determine the interest, determine the difference on the interest rate difference to get a gain on swap. So simply get the difference. So what will be your difference?
Is 0.7.
0.7%. So that is a gain that must be shared. That must be shared. So now once you get your gain, go to step number 3. Step number 3, we are to determine. Now we are answering the question, guys. So we are to determine each party's net gain. So we need to get KK Limited is a net gain. And what will be this? You get the sharing ratio, which is they are sharing equally. They are sharing the gain equally. So it is 0.5 or 50%. 0.5 times what? Times what is the gain? 0.7%. Avoid making a mistake. The sharing ratio, put it in decimal points. Then the gain on swap, put it in percentage, so that when you're using the calculator, you don't make a mistake. So once you get this, we are following the formula. A sharing ratio times gain on swap, then minus the total fees charged. The total fees charged by the bank, by the intermediator. The total fees charged by the intermediator. How much did the bank charge KK? Do we have that cost? Do we have that cost, guys? Do we have that money? Do we have that money? XY Bank would charge a fee of 15 basis points
15 basis
to each what? To each party individually. So it means that also KK Limited will pay the 15 basis points. And in terms of percentage, that is 0.15. So this is the total fees charged in terms of percentage. So when you do this, what will be your final answer? On your calculator, open a bracket, get 0.5 times 0.7, close bracket, minus 0.15.
We're getting
Now
the answer is getting 0.2.
0.2. The
Two.
final answer?
Yes.
Let me hope that's clear. As you do your, as you use your calculator, simply get 0.5 times 0.7, then minus 0.15. The answer you get will be in percentage. Okay. So next, you also look for the counterparties, the counterparties net gain. Net gain, which will be also what? The sharing ratio 0.5 because it is equal, times the net gain, which is 0.7%, then minus the total fees charged by the bank. The banker charged the counterparty how much? Sometimes you'll find that it's not the same, but in this question, it was the same, 0.15%. That is 15 basis points. So here the answer is still 0.2%. Any question on step number 3? Well, yeah. Any question on step number 3? Because we are done. We are done with step number 3. So step number 4. Step number 4 is to get the net results. Net results without swap. Here you need to pay attention. How do we get net results without the swap? How do you get net results without the swap? Here you can answer in the table format. You have the company hedging, you give the space here. Don't write, first wait. You have the company hedging, which is KK Limited. Then you have the counterparty. You have the KK Limited, and the counterparty. Okay. Now, as you determine the net results without swap, you always need the rate without swap, or where the rate without swap. I'm going to explain this rate without swap. Then you also need to bring your net gains, the one you computed. The ones you computed. Or here we can immediately first put these ones because you have them. It's 0.2%. Even here it's 0.2%. Then after that, you simply have your net results. Net results. But the question is, how are you going to determine this rate? Very, very, very key. How are you going to determine this rate? Now, always know that to determine this rate, you look at what the counterparty is paying. Now, when you look at these rates, where does the company hedging benefit more? When it enters into a swap arrangement. Does it benefit when it is paying floating rate, or it benefits when it is paying a fixed rate? If in a swap arrangement you realize that the company hedging benefits in, let's say, floating rate, Then in a arrangement without swap, you go with the other rate. If in a swap arrangement, so you always need to first know where does the company hedging benefit more in a swap arrangement. You first understand that. Now, if you know where the company hedging benefits more in the swap arrangement, then in arrangement without swap, it will be opposite. If it benefits in, let's say, if it benefits in the floating rate, when it is paying the floating rate, if in a swap arrangement if it is benefiting when it is paying a floating rate, then in arrangement without swap, you start with the fixed rate. If you realize that in arrangement with in a swap arrangement, it benefits when it is paying fixed rate, then in arrangement without swap, you start with floating rate. If you realize that it benefits in both rates, let's say it benefits in it benefits here and here. What will you do if you realize that in a swap arrangement it benefits both in floating rate and fixed rate? What do? You look for where it benefits more. Okay, what do I mean? What do I mean? You have these rates. You have these rates. You have these rates. This is your company hedging. This is your company hedging. It is paying a floating rate of this. CBR plus 30 basis point, which is 0.3%. But the counterparty is paying what? CBR plus 1.6%. Who benefits? In terms of floating rate, who benefits?
It is Keke.
Pardon?
I think it is Keke benefiting.
Keke, remember you are looking at the company hedging. You compare it with the counterparty. Your focus should be on the company hedging. Okay? So it benefits, when you observe it benefits, you have observed that it benefits when it is paying floating rate because it pays less. Here it is paying 0.3, but the other counterparty is paying 1.6. So number one, you have observed that it benefits when it is paying floating rate. The question is, does it also benefit when it is paying fixed rate, or it does not benefit? Let's also look at this. KK Limited, fixed rate is paying what? 5.6, but the other counterparty is paying what? 6.2. Does it benefit? Here we are looking at our company hedging. Does it benefit?
Yeah. Still it is paying lesser.
Still is benefiting. Still is benefiting. So you see here, it is benefiting in two rates. It is benefiting in two rates. Now, because it is benefiting in two rates, now we will be asking ourselves, where does it benefit more? Where does it benefit more? Is it when it is paying floating rate or when it is paying fixed rate? Remember, this is in a swap arrangement. This is in a swap arrangement. Swap arrangement. This is in swap arrangement. Now, the question is, where does it benefit more? Who can tell me where does it benefit more? When it is paying a floating rate or fixed rate? So you come to where you have interest rate differences. Of course, where you have the interest rate difference, you need to observe, like here, if it is paying 0.3 and here is the other counterparty is paying 1.6, you're benefiting approximately 1.3. Then here you are benefiting approximately 0. What? You're saving 0.6. Where do you save more? Where do you benefit more?
The floating rate.
So we benefit here. We benefit when we benefit more when we are paying a floating rate, where we are saving 0.2 or rather 1.3%. Here you are like saving 1.3%. You are benefiting more when you're paying a floating rate in swap arrangement. So after knowing that, it means that in arrangement without swap, you must start with fixed rate. Okay, you must start with the fixed rate. Because you see, the reason why you're starting with fixed rate is that at the time you're computing in a net result with swap here, because here you'll be in a swap arrangement. So it means that in a swap arrangement, you'll be using the rate where you benefit more, that is floating rate. So here in a swap arrangement, in arrangement without swap, here, we are going to start with KK Limited. We are going to start with which rate? Now I think you are experts. Tell me, we are starting with which rate?
The fixed rate.
We are starting with a fixed rate. This floating rate will be used when we are handling the floating rate will be used when we are handling the net result with swap. Here you benefit more here. You benefit more here. Okay. Guys, you need to master this. You need to master this, because the moment you fail to identify this, then everything will be hard for you. So here we are seeing that we are going to start with what was the fixed rate of KK Limited? What was the fixed rate? It was 5.6. So the moment you realize that you are using 5.6, then the other counterparty, you use the opposite. You don't use the fixed rate. You use the flotation rate. If you realize that here without we started with floating rate, then the counterparty you start with the fixed rate. Okay, so because here we have started with the fixed rate, the counterparty we must start with with the floating rate. What was the floating rate of the counterparty? So you
CBR plus 1.6.
CBR plus
1.6.
1.6. Remember, these are costs. These are costs. So you put them in bracket. These are costs because you're going to pay. Yeah? These are costs you're going to pay. But this is a gain you're going to get. So this one is positive. This one is positive. So what is the net results? It's negative. This plus this. This is positive. What do you get? Put some speed.
It's 5.4.
5.4. Then here it will be your CBR. Plus what? Here you are getting like negative negative 1.6 plus 0.2.
It is 1.4.
Pardon?
CBR plus 1.4.
1.4%. Please, if you have not understood, let me know. I can explain, most especially how you identify this. How you identify this. You first know in swap arrangement, where does the company hedging benefit more? In swap arrangement, where does the company hedging benefit more? After knowing that, just do the opposite. Start with the other rate as you deal with the results without a swap. Now, we are done with step number. We are done with step number 4. So the last step, we need net results. Net results with swap. Net results with swap. So how do you deal with this? Here you have KK Limited. Then you have the counterparty. Now here, you will, of course, you'll start with the rate. You're going to borrow at what rate? The rate, you're going to borrow at what rate? The rate, borrow at what? Or you can just say the rate with swap. Then next, you're going to look at what you're going to pay to the bank, the banker fees. Because you're entering into the swap arrangement, the fact that you're entering into the swap arrangement, you need to pay what? You need to pay the banker fees. The fact that you are entering into the swap arrangement, you need to pay the intermediator. Then next, you will ask. This is in a swap arrangement. The rate. Okay, just maybe to understand it better. Rate with swap. Because the other side we started with the rate without swap. So here it's the rate with swap, the borrowing rate. Okay. Then you will also look at what the company hedging will pay. What the company hedging will pay. The company hedging will pay how much. Then the counterparty will be paying how much. The counterparty pays how much as well. So we'll also follow the rule. These are things that you need to always, like your workings should flow, should flow in this format. Then after that, you have to get your net results. You have to get your net results. So just to understand the flow, then I will explain each. Now here, the net results, already you have the net results. You start from here. Just copy and paste. Already you have. Start from there. Okay? Start from there. Then, banker fees, it's direct as well. We saw the banker fees. Someone to remind me, what was our banker fee? How much did the banker charge KK? How much did the banker charge? It was the same, eh? It was 15 basis 0.15, so even here 0.115. Remember, this is a cost. So put it in bracket. This is a cost. Put it in bracket. This is a cost. 0.15 plus 0.15 plus 0.115. 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 0.15 plus 0. show that it's a cost, you put it in bracket. Then in arrangement with swap, KK Limited, we saw that KK Limited is going to go with which rate? In arrangement with swap, KK Limited is going to go with which rate? The floating or fixed?
The fixed rate.
In arrangement with swap.
Oh no, the floating. The floating rate.
Swap arrangement, we saw that you benefit more when it is floating rate. Just you start with, it must be floating rate automatically. In arrangement with swap, you must start with the floating rate. If just always come back to your analysis. Always come back at, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, always come back at your analysis. In arrangement with swap, we are going with floating rate because it's where you benefit more. Okay, so here we start with the floating rate. What was our floating rate? It is CBR plus, what was the floating rate for KK Limited?
0.3%.
0.3%. Then the moment you use the floating rate here, automatically counterparty, you use fixed rate, the opposite. What was the fixed rate of the counterparty?
6.2%.
6.2%. This is a cost, you put it in bracket. Any question here? Now, after knowing this, you ask yourself, just go to net results without swap and ask yourself, who is actually paying CBR? When you look at your net results, who is paying CBR? The counterparty is paying CBR. So you, after knowing that the counterparty is paying CBR, come here and put the counterparty where you have the column of counterparty. Counterparty is paying CBR. These are some of the steps that you can easily recall. The counterparty is paying the CBR. Now, if the counterparty is paying the CBR, who will receive that CBR? The other party. So here you put that CBR in positive form. You put the CBR in positive form. So let me hope you have had my question. Who is paying CBR in the net results without swap? It's the counterparty. So because it's the counterparty paying CBR, then the other party will receive that CBR. Okay, we are done with this now. If we realize that maybe here we started with CBR, rate without swap, if at all we realize that in arrangement without swap, we started with CBR here, then it would be KK Limited paying CBR and the counterparty receiving that CBR. Okay, Now, after knowing this, you're done with the number. Actually, you're done with the number. How? You'll be looking for the figure here. You'll be looking for the figure here. You'll be looking for the balance. This is like the balancing figure. How do you get the balancing figure? Do you know how to get the balancing figure? You have everything, you're looking for the balancing figure. And the beauty with this is that if you get the figure here as a positive, just make that figure as a negative here. So you can focus on one side. You can start with this one, or you can focus on this one. If you do this and get a negative here, then the other side you make that figure a positive. If you start with this side and you get this figure as a negative, then you make this figure to be a positive. Just maintain the figure, but change the sign. Okay, so let's get the x. Let's get x. I can use this side. How can you get x? Do you know how to get the x? So here it will be negative CBR. If I start with negative. Here it will be negative CBR because I'm using the Excel. When I start with negative, it becomes hard for me. So you will just say negative CBR plus negative 0.3%, then plus negative 0. I can just say minus 0.15% plus the x that I'm looking for plus the CBR. CBR is equal to what? Net results, 5.4%. You guys, are you on?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I am looking for the unknown. So I get this plus this plus this plus this, then equal to this. But remember, some of your figures are negative. So you have negative CBR and also positive what? Positive CBR. Don't you see that these ones will cancel? This one will cancel with this. And you'll be left with what? Negatives. Yes, please.
That this equals to the 5.4. Is it not supposed to be a negative? The 5.4%.
Yes, it's a negative. It's a negative. This is a negative. Those who told it's a negative, this is a negative. This is a negative. Because when you get negative 5, can you hear me?
Yes.
If you get negative 5.6 plus 0.2, you get negative this. So here it will be equal to negative this. So CBR, this negative CBR plus CBR will cancel. So you'll be left with negative 0.3 minus 0.15. What do you get? This will be negative what? It will be X, it will be, someone tell me.
I'm getting negative 0.45.
Negative 0.45%. Then plus what? Plus X is equal to negative what? Negative 5.4%. Remember, you are looking for what? You are looking for X. So how will you get this X? How will you get this X?
I think we make X the subject and then we bring a you bring this negative 0.45 to the other side.
Okay, so here my x will be, I want the x. So I take, it will be negative what? Negative 5.4%. The other figure was negative. When it crosses equal signs, it becomes what? A positive,
Positive.
isn't it?
Mm.
So you get plus 0. What? It was 0.45.
0.45.
So what do you get? This will be negative what?
It will be 4.95.
Pardon? 4.95.
Negative 4.95.
So that's what you put here. That's what you put here. It's a negative. So it's negative 4.995%. So because this is negative, automatically this one will be what? Will be a positive. Just you change the sign. Even if you do the working, you will realize that you get this. We can, because there is also a situation where someone wants to do the start from this side. But I recommend that just do once, you focus on one side. If you get negative, the other side you put a positive. The same figure, but change the sign. Someone who started with this, you also do the same. Negative 6.2%. Then plus negative 0.15 plus x plus CBR plus CBR is equal to negative CBR minus 1.4. But me, I recommend that don't start with the side that has a CBR on net results. It will take time. It will take a lot of your time. But if you decide to start with that, it's also okay. Okay, so we are looking for x. We are looking for x. See whether indeed you get 4.95%. Someone tell me negative 6.2 plus negative 0.15. What do you get? This will be negative. This will be negative what? Negative 7 point what?
You get that.
Negative 7.35. Is it?
No. Negative 6.35.
Getting negative 6 point.
Negative 6.35.
Yes.
Then plus x plus CBR. Please, as I said, don't start with this side where you have CBR on net result. It will take time. This is minus CBR minus 1.4%. Do you know the reason why I have made this one a negative? Because here it was a plus, but now here I'm putting it as a negative. Let me hope you know the reason. Because I am opening brackets. This is already negative. So negative CBR, if you open brackets, automatically this was a negative. So that's why I'm making it. Yes, please.
Even this, I think even this CBR is supposed to be negative. X plus.
Yeah, this one is also supposed
to
be. It is supposed to be negative. This one is supposed to be negative. But as I said, don't start with this side, where you have CBR on net results. Don't start with that side. Okay, so what do you get? You remember you're looking for x, so you take everything the other side. So x will be negative CBR, the one that I have this side, then plus I bring this CBR this side, it becomes a positive. CBR minus 1.4%, this one. Then, plus, because this was a negative, when it crosses equal sign, it becomes what? A positive, plus 6.35. Finally, what will be your x? Your x will be, of course, the CBR will cancel. You get negative 1.4 plus 6.35. Do you get this?
Yes.
So that's what you can do. But I don't recommend to start with this. It takes time. Just focus on the side where you don't have CBR on net results. Focus on the side where you don't have CBR on net result as you look for the unknown. Okay, let me hope now it is clear, guys. We are done with the number. Now, to comment the swap arrangement, in the swap arrangement, KK Limited will pay a flotation rate and receive a fixed rate. And that will help them to mitigate the interest rates fluctuations. Okay, so part B, or we can stop here. Part B, it was about basically theory. To what extent can interest rate swaps and options serve as effective hedging instruments? To what extent? So here you're just giving the merits and demerits. To what extent can these two serve as effective hedging instruments? Just give the merits and the demerits of each. Do you know them? Stabilization of the what? Stabilization of the cash flows. You look at that thing in that scenario, because here the swaps allow borrowers with floating debt at switch to fixed rate payments, and in that way you eliminate the uncertainty, because you eliminate the uncertainty. Here you eliminate what? You eliminate the uncertainty. You eliminate the uncertainty caused by what? Caused by the fluctuating rates. Most especially if you realize that you were paying the variable or the floating rate. Remember, floating rate keeps on changing. This CBR you see, that one keeps on changing. So if you enter into a swap arrangement, probably you may find that your shift, like the way we have said that here, it will just be receiving the interest. Now, in that way, you will be in a position to know. You'll be in a position to know how much you can be paying as interest. Like you can predict very well your cash flows without fear, or without those things of uncertainty. But as you explain this point, you explain it from the angle of swap allowing borrowers with floating rate debt to switch to fixed rate payments, because fixed rate payments eliminate the uncertainty. Caused by the fluctuating rates. Those fluctuating rates comes in when you're using floating rate. Okay, that is how you can explain that. And of course, it means that There it is vital for budgeting, because you'll be knowing now in this month I'm going to pay this interest cost. In this month I'm going to pay this interest cost, because the interest rate will be fixed. Okay, you know it, guys who are managers here, who are accountants. And also helps you in long-term planning. Okay? All these things will help you long-term planning. Okay, then maybe another point is that it is tailored and flexible. We have tailored and flexible contracts. Swaps can be designed to exactly match the exposure in amount. So you can design this arrangement in a way that you match the exposure in amount, maturity period, things related to interest rate, okay, it's the same interest rate. Now you realize that, like, when you're using features, sometimes the timing affects you, because these are on the market. There is March, June, September, December. So because these are standardized, there is no flexibility when it comes to features and options. There is no flexibility. There is no flexibility. You have to go with what is in the market. But when it comes to the swap, you just agree on the amount and you move on. Right? The amount, the time, you agree. Okay, there is that kind of flexibility. Then also it is cost effective. You guys, are you getting the points I'm trying to explain? Cost effective. Are you trying to pick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The cost effective part is that when it comes to swaps, you're not paying issues related to premiums. No. Unlike options where you pay this upfront premiums, upfront costs. With swaps, you don't pay that kind of money. So there is no, when it comes to swaps, there is no upfront premium, and this makes this instrument to be cheaper to implement. So what does that one mean? It will allow even these small companies to even hedge without immediate cash outflow. Okay, or cash out, the initial cost that we pay when we are using swap. And what I have liked with these topics, options, swaps, these features, the points you put here can help you even to get other, when you're dealing with, let's say, the options. Because when I say it is cost effective, just imagine I'm explaining options. Options is not cost effective, because here you will be paying what? You will be paying the upfront premiums. It's one of the demerits when it comes to options. Same applies to features, because you saw that with features you're paying margins, those market. Every time the rate is not moving in your favorable position, you pay those margins. So it affects your cash flows. So these are some of the things. The more you read the advantages and disadvantages of each, you realize that these things and it is easy to even get points. And then also here, there is that issue of long-term risk management. Not like other instruments, because other instruments, it's hard to get let's say a contract of 2 years in the market. No, those ones are like for 1 year, March, June, September, December. It's only basically 1 year. But when it comes to the swap, you can agree, you can be having a loan that takes maybe 4 years. So you enter into swap arrangement, you agree, maybe you interchange. Me, I was paying fixed rate. Let's interchange. I pay you flotation rate, you pay me fixed rate, but for a long period of what? Long period of time. So you mitigate the risk, the risk in the risk that you would have exposed to in a long term. So it basically here what we are saying is that it protects firms over the entire duration of it protects firm over the entire duration of borrowing, not necessarily looking at 1 year, 3 months. If your loan period is for 4 years, you can swap. Just here we are still talking about advantages. Of course, there is always that disadvantage in a way that not every country allow these things of swap. There is that restriction. Not every country. Okay. So another point may be the enhancement of what? The enhancement of credit profile. Credit profile. Just imagine you don't have a good credit rating in another country. You don't have a good credit rating in another country. You can just use the other counterparty to overcome that issue. So here this point would be it improves access to credit and lowers costs of borrowing. You have access to credit because really you just need the other counterparty, just engage the bank or the other intermediator, then get the counterparty and make your deal. Life moves on. What else can we put, guys? There are many points. There are many points. There is issue of flexibility. We have talked about flexibility. Yes. We have talked about the flexibility part of it. So I think other points you may add them, but you can just read through other points, maybe such. But when it comes to demerits, there is always that counterparty risk, counterparty credit risk. That counterparty credit risk. The other party can default. That's what we are trying to mean. The risk that the counterparty may default. There is always that risk. There is also that risk of the basis risk. It also comes here again. because you may think that the floating rate may be high, but at the time of the transaction, actually the actual rate is not high. So there is always that the movement may not go in the direction you thought at the start. So the floating rate may differ from the actual, actual exposure. So there is also that kind of risk, the basis risk. There is also the risk of what? There is a risk of the opportunity. These things are irreversible, and of course here opportunity loss. The opportunity loss. Just always imagine you entered into a swap. First of all, it's irreversible, and irreversible, and there is also opportunity loss. Once you enter into a swap arrangement, it cannot be easily cancelled. And what does that one mean? If the market rates move favorably, like for you, you thought the rate would increase. The interest rate would increase, but you realize that probably the rate has actually reduced. There you lose that kind of benefit. This point you should always put it almost in every demerit of these instruments. Whether you're dealing with options, whether you're dealing with features, whether you're dealing with forward rate, this point of opportunity loss will always be there. Will always be there. Just maybe apart from options, because options you have a right to exercise. You have a right to exercise or not. If you realize that the market rate is favoring you, you don't need to exercise. So that one of options, you put it aside. We are going to see this on Monday. Okay, so but with swaps, there is always that thing that once you enter into arrangement, it's hard to cancel. And if you realize that the rates are now in your favorable, the rates are favorable or are lower, you cannot benefit. You cannot benefit. And then also, there is always this also point. It cuts across, guys. Issue of accounting complexity. Issue of the accounting. These things, how you account them. It's not easy. It's not all that easy. Accounting complexity. Because swaps must be marked to market in financial reporting. You need to, how we determine gains, how we determine losses, on these instruments is not easy, guys. It requires people who have experience. Otherwise, it will be hard for you to account for these instruments. Remember, these are derivatives. These are derivatives that fall under IFRS 9. So that accounting bit of it is not always easy. When it comes to forward contracts, when it comes to swaps, when it comes to futures, this point should always be there. This point should always be there. Especially in terms of how to account for these transactions. Not easy. Not easy. Okay? I think, guys, what else can we add before we stop? What else can we add? I have given you 4. Will you get other points? Will you get other points? But you can search more. you can search more. Just my time is over. That's why I'm trying to, my time is over. So we can stop here. Please also, you need to know the advantages and disadvantages when it comes to option. I have not talked about options because it's what we are going to discuss next time.